لا إله إلا الله لا إله إلا الله لا إله إلا الله ما لنا رب سوى لا إله إلا الله
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما اللهم صل على سيدنا ومولانا محمد وعلى آل سيدنا ومولانا محمد وبارك وسلم وصلي عليه. Before I carry on, I'd like everybody to move closer, please. You guys come around because today's an interactive lecture, inshallah. So you guys need to see the board, but the Kam Hussein especially. And move around, come around this way. Come on. You're going to have to see the board today. If you don't see the board, you won't understand what's going on. Alhamdulillah, alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen. We thank Allah Almighty who have blessed me and you again this opportunity to come to the masjid on this evening of Wednesday to remember him, his beloved Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, and then the beloved of the beloved as well. Alhamdulillah, महबूब की महफिल को महबूब सजाते हैं, आते हैं वही जिनको सरकार बुलाते हैं. Alhamdulillah, we are fortunate from many thousands out there today that we have been chosen to come to the masjid and sit in the house of Allah. Alhamdulillah, the previous 2 weeks our honorable respected Sheikh spoke about Karbala, the events leading up to Karbala, what happened in Karbala, and the honorable Sheikh left us at the point where Bibi Zainab and the rest of the companions were given ijazat to leave back to Madinatul Munawwara. So the topic of the poster, I think, is what is Karbala, or what happened at Karbala, but we covered that last week. So the topic I gave our honorable speaker today is what happened after Karbala, inshallah. Today we are blessed to be sitting in the company of an individual who is blessed to have academic and secular knowledge as well as Islamic knowledge, holding 5 degrees. Say subhanallah. Some of us can't even reach one. Alhamdulillah, this individual with us has 5 degrees, not from one university or just the United Kingdom, but over 3 continents of the world. Which includes, if I'm not wrong, a master's degree, and then also a PhD as well. Alhamdulillah, subhanallah. Alongside that, fortunate is he who is also a Hafiz of the Quran, a Qari of the Quran, and then to round it off and to top it off, a Alim also. Subhanallah. So we are fortunate tonight to be blessed with such an individual who is currently serving as an Imam. Also adding to his bio, he is a writer and also a researcher. One of the books I can see, which I'm sure they were going to talk about, but I introduce it myself, is a book about Imam Hussein alayhi salam and the tragedy of Karbala. A book which they have wrote themselves. They have wrote many books, but this one I would like to ask all you brothers, inshallah, to take a copy on your way out, a very detailed book about Karbala. On your way out, inshallah, somebody will be on the door to take those with that. So without further ado, I would like to welcome our honorable Dr. Hafiz Ather Al Azhari. Nare Takbir, Allahu Akbar. Nare Takbir, Allahu Akbar. Nare Risala, Ya Rasulullah. Nare Risala, Ya Rasulullah.
Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. والعاقبة للمتقين والصلاة والسلام على سيد الأنبياء والمرسلين أما بعد فقد قال الله تعالى في القرآن المجيد والفرقان الحميد ولنبلونكم بشيء من الخوف والجوع ونقص من الأموال والأنفس والثمرات وبشر الصابرين صدق الله العظيم إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما اللهم صل على سيدنا ومولانا محمد وعلى آل سيدنا ومولانا محمد وبارك وسلم وصل عليه. Respected brothers in Islam, first and foremost my thanks to the organizers, to Assalam and to the Gatherings of Hope team for inviting me to this prestigious platform to talk and to give a presentation on a very important topic area. And my thanks and gratitude to you all for coming to this talk. Inshallah ta'ala, like it has been explained, what I would like to do over the next half an hour or so is to explain, we are still in the month of Muharram, to explain what happened after the selfless and beautiful sacrifice of Sayyidina Imam Hussain radiallahu ta'ala anhu in the fields of Karbala, an event which happened on the 10th of Muharram in the 61st year of Hijrah. So what I would like to do is offer you a chronological account of some of the things that happened, and the reason behind that is quite important too. Number one, the reason is that the memory of Sayyidina Imam Hussain and the Ahlul Bayt lives on. This is very important, and I'll show you with a simple example of how important it is even this week. You know the term martyrdom now. In reality, the term martyrdom is very prestigious. It's a great honor, it's a great sharaf to be given to any Muslim. But thanks to groups like the Islamic State, thanks to people like Boko Haram, thanks to Al-Qaeda, this term has no value anymore. It has no meaning behind it. It is just the spilling of blood now. Even this week, that a young individual from Derby, he went to Iraq and he blew himself up. This only happened this week. The chances are that in a week's time you won't remember his name. The chances are you might not even know his name now. Why? Because his martyrdom was valueless, I would say. It has no benefit, it has no value, it has no purpose behind it. Compare that now with the sacrifice and the martyrdom, true martyrdom, of Sayyidina Imam Hussain radiallahu ta'ala anhu. 1,375 years have passed. Subhanallah. And we are still remembering it. Subhanallah. So whatever history records, that is something of worth, isn't it? And history will not look kindly to the Islamic State, to Al-Qaeda, to Boko Haram, to all of these groups, who seemingly indulge in this term martyrdom and this term jihad. True jihad is when your memory is left in the books of history forever, when you have left an imprint on the sands of history. And certainly Sayyidina Imam Hussain radiallahu ta'ala anhu was one of those figures. So that's the primary reason, to ensure that the memory of Imam Hussain remains in our hearts. The second reason is just as important, is that unfortunately in this day and age, people give a twisted and perverted version of what happened in Karbala and afterwards. In particular, what they do is they try to shift the blame onto certain individuals who were in Karbala at the time, and they try to make Yazid completely innocent of this crime. So they try to suggest that he had nothing to do with this, number one. And number two, that he was regretful after he heard about the sacrifice of Imam Hussain radiallahu ta'ala anhu, to the extent, believe it or not, they go to the extent that the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam himself said that Yazid would be forgiven. If you want to read more about that, then there is a whole appendix about that claim in this particular book at the end. So you can read about that. But what I would like to do is show you from historical sources what really happened in Karbala. The problem is that anyone who studies the social sciences will tell you, if you've done history in school, in college, in university, what you will find is the history, it depends who's reporting it, doesn't it? The same event, it depends who's actually reporting it, and that's how the version comes to us, isn't it? I suppose that's with anything. You go to a football match sometimes, and it depends who you're supporting, isn't it? And that's how you're going to give your opinion. You ever listen to 606 in the evenings on a Saturday evening? The same match, and you'll hear contrasting views of what's going on. Why? Because the supporters of one team will give their version, the supporters of the other team will give their version. In Islamic history, we have the same problem, unfortunately. We don't have that with the ahadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Why? Because as you know, when the Prophet alaihi salatu wasallam used to mention something, when he used to say something, or when he used to do something, the companions, they reported it, and then the people who took it from them, they took it from him in a chain, what we call, of narration, a sanad. And each person in that sanad, that chain, would be checked to make sure that the information given is verified. And then accordingly, we classify the reports as sahih, authentic, hasan, fair, da'if, weak. With history, we don't have that same kind of authentication and verification. It's a bit more loose. Especially with an episode like this, where, as you can imagine, the Shias will have their say as well. Where you can imagine that the pro-Yazid supporters will have their say. You will find a very large volume of material in front of you, and a lot of it does contradict. The same event's happening, but unfortunately people give their own version. And why is that? Because of their own particularity about who they are, basically. If you're a pro-Imam Hussain radiallahu ta'ala who supported, then you'll have one view. If you were sitting in Kufa, you'll have another view. If you were Shia, you'll have another view. In order to solve that problem, what I have done to the best of my ability, and the same goes to this book as well and to this presentation, is try to depend on only the most reliable primary Sunni sources.
Subhanallah.
I have, as much as possible, avoided secondary sources where you get a modern book and says, oh, it's in Sahih Bukhari or it's from this book. I have gone back to the original sources. Using books which are only yards away from yours. And the books I've depended on is number one, Al-Bidayah wa Nihaya, which is a brilliant biography of the Prophet's life and the history of the Muslim Ummah, written by Hafiz ibn Kasir. Tarikh Tabari, again a very famous Sunni encyclopedic historical source as well. Tarikh al-Islam by Imam Zahabi, very reliable, a great hadith reporter and a very important authority in the field of hadith as well. And finally, Tarikh al-Khulafa, written by the great Imam Jalaluddin Suyuti, rahmatullahi alayhi. To give you an idea where we're going next, what I would like to do then is that we will talk about what happened after the events of Karbala. Last week you heard from our honorable Sheikh about what happened after the martyrdom of Sayyidina Imam Hussain radiallahu ta'ala anhu. So we'll talk briefly about what happened in Karbala and Kufa. Then the family of the Imam Hussain radiallahu ta'ala anhu, they journeyed to Damascus. Damascus was the capital, you could say, of the Khilafah at that time. Yazid was sitting there. What happened there, we will mention a particular important event in the form of Imam Zainul Abidin's khutbah there. Imam Zainul Abidin was the young son of Imam Hussain radiallahu ta'ala anhu, who survived Karbala. Eventually there was a return to Medina Sharif by the Ahlul Bayt, and then there's three unfortunate episodes. Heinous, evil, and it's quite embarrassing to actually even talk about them. And in order, we will talk about how Yazid attacked Medina Sharif, how he attacked Makkah Sharif, and then his demise and his so-called legacy. So this is basically where we will be going. And if you do have any questions, then please at the end do ask them. If you've got any particular points, عليه توكلت وإليه أنيب حسبي الله لا إله إلا هو عليه توكلت وهو رب العرش العظيم ولا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم. On the 10th of Muharram, in the 61st year of Hijrah, in the scorching hot desert of Karbala, Imam Hussain radiallahu ta'ala anhu was martyred for the sake of Islam. As you know very well, that most of his family members, they were also martyred during this battle. Many prominent companions, many of the young children as well, of Imam Hussain and his brother Imam Hassan radiallahu ta'ala anhu. The evil Yazidis, upon the instruction of Ibn Sa'd, Ibn Sa'd was the commander who was in the field in Karbala itself. So you could say he was the commander-in-chief. His line of authority went up to Ibn Ziyad. Ibn Ziyad was sitting in Kufa. And his chain of authority led to Yazid. Yazid was sitting in Damascus. So Ibn Sa'd, upon his instructions, the whole tent of Imam Hussain radiallahu ta'ala anhu was looted. Even the most basic necessities, things like food, of which there was very little, blankets, these were looted as well by the evil Yazidis as well. Shimr, who was instrumental in the martyrdom of Sayyidina Imam Hussain radiallahu ta'ala anhu, he saw the young son of Imam Hussain, Ali ibn Hussain, who famously goes by the name of Zainul Abidin. He saw him and he was moments away from killing him as well. An individual called Humayd ibn Muslim, he stopped him and he managed to persuade Shimr not to kill Zainul Abidin. Shimr, however, he did collect the blessed head of Imam Hussain radiyallahu ta'ala anhu. Like his seniors had told him that this head was to be presented to Ibn Sa'd first, then to Ibn Ziyad, and then to Yazid. So Shimr took the blessed head of Imam Hussain radiyallahu ta'ala anhu and gave it to an individual called Khawla. He told Khawla that your responsibility is as soon as possible, get this blessed head to Ibn Sa'd. He wants to see it in Kufa, and then arrangements will be made to send the blessed head to Damascus as well. Khawla realized when he had the blessed head of Imam Hussain radiyallahu ta'ala anhu that it was nightfall, and it would be difficult to journey to Kufa in order to present the head to his leader. So he decided to bring it home that night. And he said that in the morning I will go and I will give the blessed head to Ibn Sa'd. When Khawla went home, his wife was waiting for him, it was late. And he had it in a sack, you could say, a small sack. When he came home, his wife said to Khawla that, what is it in the bag? Astaghfirullah, with great pride and arrogance, Khawla said that this is the head of Imam Hussain radiyallahu ta'ala anhu. Fortunately, Khawla's wife was a decent woman and a lover of the Ahlul Bayt. And she scolded him and said that, what kind of husband are you? People bring home gold and silver. People bring home dirham and dinars after a long day's work. And you bring the head of the grandson of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam? She was very angry. She decided to sleep in another room that particular night. In the morning, reports say that when the wife of Khawla went to that room where the blessed head of Sayyidina Imam Hussain was, that she could see nur emitting from that sun. And she herself said that I could see small white birds fluttering around the blessed head of Sayyidina Imam Hussain radiyallahu ta'ala anhu. In the morning, the blessed head was presented to Ibn Ziyad in his palace. Ibn Ziyad had made qasam, you could say, mannats, solemn promises, that once Imam Hussain is killed, then I will do such and such, I will do such and such. You know, normally you make these kind of promises on good things. Ya Allah, if I pass my exam, I will give sadaqah to the mosque. Ya Allah, if I get married, I will go to Umrah. And then when you get married, you have to fulfill that. And this despicable individual, what was his nazar and what was his solemn promise? That Ya Allah, when I see the head of Imam Hussain, that I will belittle it. This is exactly what he did in the palace. He took a cane, he had a cane in his hand. When the blessed head of Imam Hussain was presented to him, he began to poke it with a cane. Astaghfirullah wa la hawla wa la quwwata illa billahi al-aliyyil azim. A day later, the family members, the remaining people, the few members of the Ahlul Bayt who remained, they were brought to Ibn Ziyad in his palace in Kufa as well. Ibn Ziyad showed no respect to the family of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam at all. In fact, just like Shimr, he taunted them, he scolded them, he called them rebels. He did everything he could in order to try to basically give them trouble and try to do their tawheen as much as possible. Again, just like Shimr before him, Ibn Ziyad was hell-bent on killing Imam Zainul Abidin radiyallahu ta'ala anhu. Someone finally pointed out that if you kill Zainul Abidin, then there were only women left. And if they have to travel to a certain place, they will have no mahram whatsoever. It is only on that basis, not because of compassion, not because of mercy, that Zainul Abidin was spared by Ibn Ziyad. Not content with doing this to the Ahlul Bayt, Ibn Ziyad, he used the Jummah khutbah, the next Jummah khutbah, to get onto the pulpit and to belittle Sayyidina Ali karramallahu wajhahu and to insult the family of Sayyidina Imam Hussain radiyallahu ta'ala anhu. One fortunate individual called Abdullah ibn Hafiz Ather radiyallahu ta'ala anhu, who was a companion, an elderly companion, when he heard Ibn Ziyad in the mosque on the day of Jummah, during the khutbah, insulting Sayyidina Ali karramallahu wajhahu and his family, he spoke up and he said, shame on you. Shame on you, Ibn Ziyad, that you have martyred the grandson of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and you're talking that you've done something good. Ibn Ziyad immediately told his police, grab that individual, he was crucified. He was executed but through crucifixion. It's not different to what ISIS are doing now, basically. ISIS are following the example of Yazid. And that is the reality of that. After the sermon, not content with that, after the sermon, Ibn Ziyad organized for a parade of the family of Imam Hussain radiallahu ta'ala anhu around the streets of Kufa. He ensured that all of the remaining female members of the Ahlul Bayt, their chadars and their hijabs were taken off, they were exposed, astaghfirullah, and they were paraded around the streets. Worse still, that a spear was brought along, and the blessed and beautiful head of Imam Hussain radiallahu ta'ala anhu was put on top of that spear. And this was paraded around as if it was some kind of flag. The purpose, to create fear into the hearts of the people of Kufa and to belittle the family of the Ahlul Bayt. To try to give the impression that you were Bewafa people, you were rebels. This is the outcome of those people who are rebels. Eventually, once they had finished in Kufa and once they were ridiculed in this unfortunate manner, arrangements were made to take the remaining family members to Yazid in Damascus. Yazid obviously knew what had happened. He knew the outcome, but he still wanted to see everyone in person. And more importantly, he wanted to see the blessed head of Imam Hussain radiallahu ta'ala anhu. At that time, when they were brought to Yazid in Damascus, the family of the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam, they were still in shackles and they were still in handcuffs. Eventually, when they were brought to the palace of Yazid, they were in this state, they were in shackles and they were in cuffs, and one individual spoke up and said that, are you crazy? This is the family, this is the Ahlul Bayt, this is the balad of Sayyidina Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Do you think it is right to hold them in shackles and cuffs and handcuffs? Eventually, Yazid did allow them to be released from that. Alone, Yazid had a conversation with Zainul Abidin radiallahu ta'ala anhu. Perhaps this is the most important aspect of understanding what happened after Karbala. This is the key now. If you understand this, then you will understand a lot of the ikhtilaf and a lot of the difference of opinions that people have about Yazid. Yazid had an audience with Zainul Abidin on his own. Yazid gave the impression that he was now kind and considerate. And he said to Zainul Abidin that if there were any requests, Zainul Abidin replied in the affirmative, and he said 4 or 5 things, so 4 or 5 requests. The first request, hand over the people who killed Imam Hussain. Yazid flatly refused. The important point to remember here is that if Yazid did show any remorse or regret for the murder of Imam Hussain radiallahu ta'ala anhu, then he would have handed them over. He would have said that, look, it was nothing to do with me. I am going to hand over the criminals and the idiots who are responsible for your father's murder. He never did that. Basically, he was protecting himself. The second request, Zainul Abidin said that please, then if you are not going to do that, at least hand over the bodies and the blessed head of my father so that we can give it a proper burial. Yazid did accept that request. The third request, Imam Zainul Abidin radiallahu ta'ala anhu requested, please allow us a safe passage back to our hometown of Madina Sharif. Yazid, he made arrangement and he said that this will also be fulfilled. Finally, Zainul Abidin radiallahu ta'ala anhu said, I have one request to be fulfilled in Damascus. Please allow me to lead the Jummah prayers next Jummah in Damascus. Quite foolishly, Yazid agreed. He agreed to this. As you can imagine, that now the town now was talking about how Zainul Abidin had been given this opportunity to speak on the pulpit in the city of Damascus in the presence of Yazid. What happened on that Friday? Imam Zainul Abidin radiallahu ta'ala anhu, like you would expect, he got onto the pulpit and he praised Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and sent salawat and salam upon his grandfather, Sayyidina Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. You could, metaphorically speaking, hear a pin drop in that mosque. Everyone was waiting for what Imam Zainul Abidin was about to say. When he sat on the Mimbar Sharif, he said that for those people who know who I am, fair enough. For those people who don't know who I am, let me introduce myself. I am the great grandson of Sayyidina Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. My grandfather is Mawlai Ali, Asadullah, the Lion of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. My grandmother is the lady of all of the female inhabitants of paradise, Sayyidah Fatima Zahra radiyallahu ta'ala anha. My father, if you haven't heard so until this point, my father was that individual about whom the Prophet himself said, Ana min al-Husayn wal-Husaynu minni. If you need reminding that my father was that individual who was given glad tidings of paradise during his lifetime. When our Prophet ﷺ said, Al-Hasan wal-Husayn sayyida shababi ahlil jannah. For those who don't know what has happened, that myself and my family, including my father, were left in the scorching hot desert of Karbala for 10 days. For 3 of these days, we were not even allowed a single drop of water. Cold and without any heart whatsoever, our family was martyred for the sake of Islam. As you can imagine, when he began this khutbah and when he woke up people, and he made people realize what had happened in the fields of Karbala, there was great commotion there. Yazid panicked. What was he to do? Yazid called the muazzin and said, quickly give the azan, quickly let's get the Jamaat out of the way. That's the only way he could think of to actually stop Imam Zainul Abidin from speaking any further. So what did Imam Zainul Abidin do? He took off his amama sharif and he threw it at the feet of the muazzin. And he said, for the sake of this amama, for the sake of Islam, do not do the azan yet. The muazzin listened. And Imam Zainul Abidin, he continued with his khutbah. He went on and he explained that ask yourselves, is there anyone who is directly related to Sayyidina Rasulullah in this mosque at this moment? It is only me. Is there anyone, Yazid, yourself, are you a relative of Imam Hussein or are you the relative of Sayyidina Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam? Of course you are not. These people, he went on to explain, have put shame to the deen of Sayyidina Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Even dogs, even cats, even animals are allowed to drink from rivers. These heinous individuals didn't even allow us to get water for the sake of ablution. There was absolute commotion in the mosque in Damascus. Imam Zainul Abidin, when he eventually finished his khutbah, and when people realized what had happened, Yazid panicked. After Jummah, he called a meeting of his close associates, of all of his chamche basically. When he called his chamche, and when he called his individuals, he said, what are we going to do about this? Whole of Damascus is talking against me. This is not good for my authority. What are we supposed to do? It's not like we can actually kill Zainul Abidin now because of this. It's going to cause more hatred. Please, think of a way out of this. His associates, they said, the solution is simple, Yazid. You were sitting in Damascus, you went in Karbala. You didn't know what happened. Just claim innocence. Pretend that you had nothing to do with it. Cut the chain of command. Give the impression that Ibn Ziyad in Kufa and Ibn Sa'd in Karbala, they were acting on their own orders, they weren't acting on your orders. Free yourself of any blame whatsoever of the murder of Imam Hussein. Be kind and considerate to them. Shower them with money, shower with them gifts. When they go back to Medina, make sure they go first class. Make sure they go in the best possible way, and that way people might get a good impression of you. This is exactly what happened. The Salafis in this day and age, what they do is they come across historical sources which suggest at least that Yazid showed some kind of remorse and regret when he saw the blessed head of Imam Hussein radiyallahu ta'ala anhu. Minor reports. Most of the reports say that he was absolutely elated when he saw the blessed head of Imam Hussein. How do we arbitrate between these reports? It's simple. If Yazid was regretful and remorseful about the martyrdom of Imam Hussein, it was after this khutbah. And the reason was not because he was in any way sad upon the martyrdom of Imam Hussein, he was just trying to protect his own skin. He was just trying to look after his own interest really. He was just like covering his back. That's the only reason. Not because he had killed the grandson of the Prophet. No nadamut or regret because of that. He was just trying to save his own skin, and that's why seemingly at least he tried to show some kind of remorse, some kind of regret. So even if people in this day and age, if they try to say to you, no, Yazid was regretful. No, look in the books of hadith and it shows that he cried. Explain to them that he only cried once Imam Zainul Abidin told the people in his hometown of Damascus what had really happened. And he only did it to save his own skin. Otherwise, all of the reports suggest that he certainly showed happiness, he was elated, he saw this as some kind of victory as well. Like we explained then Yazid, he did provide a convoy, you could say, for the remaining Ahlul Bayt to go back to Madina Sharif. They were given manpower, they were given provisions for this as well. Now we come to what happened to Yazid thereafter. Before I do that, however, I want to share with you two ahadith. Beautiful sayings of our Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. You know very well how much our Prophet loved Madina Sharif. You know, he used to pray, he said, Allahumma habbib ilayna al-Madina kama habbabta ilayna Makkah. Oh Allah, make Madina beloved to us just like you made Makkah beloved to us. He loved that place. He loved it so much that he wanted you and I to die in that place. He said that if you die in Madina Sharif, I will perform shafa'ah for you on the day of Qiyamah. He said that nobody please call Madina Yasrib, his former name. Call it Taiba, call it Taba, pure. He loved that place and he, as much as possible, talked about its beauty. On the same line, what he did, he also warned people as well about those people who tried to cause havoc, bloodshed and tensions in the city as well. For those people who have been to Umrah or to Hajj will tell you that even in this day and age, Madina Sharif is the most beautiful place on God's earth. Is it not? The hardest thing a man has to do is leave Madina Sharif. Is there anyone who hasn't shed tears when they leave Madina Sharif? Is there anyone when they're leaving in their taxi or in their bus just doesn't keep looking back at the Humma, the Khadra, at the minarets? I mean, I only came back in May and just talking about it is just bringing shivers to me. It's a beautiful city. Our Prophet wanted it to remain that way. And that is why he mentioned ahadith like this one. He said, Man akhafa ahl al-Madina, whoever scares the people of Medina, Allah will scare them. And upon them is the curse of Allah, His angels and all of the people. Leave Madina Sharif alone, is the message from our Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam. And in another hadith, and even more, you could say, intense you could say, whosoever intends evil with the people of Medina, Allah will dissolve them. Just like salt dissolves in water. Azabahullah. Allah will make them disappear. Keep this in mind as we talk about what happened thereafter. After Karbala, Yazid changed the governor of Madina Sharif. At the time it was Walid ibn Utbah, he changed him to one of his people called Usman ibn Muhammad. Usman knew the political tension that had happened because of Karbala. And he knew that part of his task and responsibility would be now is to change the mind of people of Medina about Yazid. So what did he do? He said, Usman said to himself, what I'll do is I'll find the biggest players in the city. You know, the tribal leaders, you could say, the remaining companions, the people who everyone respects. I will find 3-4 of them, and what I'll do is I'll send them from Medina to Damascus. And in Damascus, Yazid can entertain them, talk to them, shower them with gifts, and try to get them on their side, basically. Sounds like a good idea, sounds like good diplomatic thinking. That's exactly what Usman ibn Muhammad did. And who did he choose for this actual task? He chose Abdullah ibn Hanzala, Abdullah ibn Abi Amra, and Munzir ibn Zubair. These are the 3 individuals who were sent. When they turned up in Damascus, these 3 individuals from Madina Sharif, they were showered with gifts. They were given utmost hospitality. They were treated like royalty. Abdullah ibn Hanzala personally, he was given 100,000 dirhams in his back pocket. You know, a wink, you know, the brown envelope kind of thing. And this was given by Yazid to Abdullah ibn Hanzala. Abdullah ibn Hanzala at the time never said anything. He returned back to Madina Sharif. When he came back to Madina Sharif, immediately the people came to these 3 individuals, in particular Abdullah ibn Hanzala, and said, tell us, how happened in Damascus? An individual, these kind of questions. Abdullah ibn Hanzala, without hesitation, he said, we have just come from an individual who has absolutely nothing to do with Islam. He drinks alcohol and he listens to music. He added that he gave me 100,000 dirhams. He gave this as basically kickback, as a bribe money, isn't it? Hush money. That's what it is. It still happens in this day and age as well. You know, for those people who follow Formula 1, Bernie Ecclestone, he committed all kind of frauds to keep hold of the Formula 1 and his rights. And the Germans, basically, it was a German bank who got involved. And they were going to take him to court. And Bernie Ecclestone knew this was the end of him. What did he do? He paid them 17 million pounds out of his back pocket and said, let's settle out of court. That's the legal term for it, settle out of court. The reality is just a bribe, basically, that please, Khuda de waste, keep quiet. That's what it was. It happens now, it happened then as well. Abdullah ibn Hanzala happily told everybody, he's given me 100,000 dirhams rishwat, bribery to keep me quiet. The people asked, what are you going to do with this money then? He said, I'm going to start buying weapons so I can fight him. This is what I'm going to do with the money that he's given to me. This is exactly what the people of Medina Sharif, they decided to do. They said, we are going to rise against Yazid, this evil person who certainly doesn't deserve the title of Amirul Mu'mineen. Based on this news, the people of Medina removed Usman ibn Muhammad as their governor. In its place was a pious individual called Abdullah ibn Mut'i. Abdullah ibn Mut'i, he came in charge. Abdullah ibn Mut'i, he got the people together and he started gathering troops as well. Yazid obviously learnt about this. How? Because when Usman ibn Muhammad was ousted from his job, the first thing he did was to tell his senior, who was Yazid in Damascus. He said, look, the people of Medina have overthrown me. It looks like they're going to fight against you. So do something about this. So what did Yazid decide to do? He decided to prepare an army to send to Medina Sharif to attack it. He sent 12,000 people, all of them were armed. When he did so, he bribed each individual soldier with 100 dinars. Again, nothing different from what ISIS are doing today. Every single person who is fighting for ISIS is getting $100 a day. Now, that doesn't seem like a lot. But if you live in the Middle East, where normally your wages are about $2 a day, average, that's a lot of money. So nothing's changed really. Basically, again, you can see that the Islamic State, they're just following the example of Yazid. Who was going to be his commander-in-chief? Yazid needed to send someone, 12,000. He wasn't going to go himself, obviously. So he needed to send someone. What did he do? First thing he did, he opened up his address book and he found the people who had helped him in Karbala. Ibn Sa'd. Ibn Sa'd, please, go to Medina Sharif and kill these people. Ibn Sa'd said, please, I'm not going. I don't want anything to do with you. Then he contacted Ibn Ziyad, same question. Please, will you go and attack them just like you did in Karbala? I've not got nothing to do with this. Eventually, one unfortunate individual called Muslim bin Uqba, he agreed to take the army. This is a letter that was written to Muslim. Leave the people for 3 days. If they agree to your demands, so be it. Otherwise, fight them. And when you overcome them, give license to pillage the city for 3 days. Whatever property, silver coins, weapons, and food are found belong to the army. When the 3 days have passed, withdraw from the people. When he approached Medina Sharif, then what happened? He blocked all of the escape routes of the city. He gave them 3 days. Obviously, Abdullah ibn Mut'i and the like, they were not going to give in to these tyrannical people. After 3 days, these 12,000, they attacked the city, the beautiful city of Medina Taibah. This happened in the 63rd year of Hijrah in the month of Zulhajj. Let me remind you that in Islam, there were 4 sacred months in the calendar. What does it mean by the sacred months? That means that even the worst of the worst, the likes of Abu Jahl and Abu Lahab, they never used to fight in the sacred months. All the Arabs respected the sacred months. The Yazidis, they did not respect Zulhajj, which is one of the sacred months. They attacked Medina Sharif in this month. Abdullah ibn Mut'i's 7 sons were killed in front of him. And afterwards, Abdullah ibn Mut'i himself, he was martyred as well. Yazidis, astaghfirullah, wala hawla, wala quwwata. They basically put all of their horses in the mosque in Medina Sharif. They tied them there inside the mosque. And you can imagine that when they believed themselves, they couldn't care less. They beheaded 10,000 people who refused to accept Yazid. 700 companions were killed during this battle. 1,700 children of companions were also martyred in this. Abdullah ibn Hanzala too was also martyred for the sake of Islam. For 3 days continuously, they absolutely ransacked the place. Salah, for the first time, and inshallah for the last time, was suspended in Masjid al-Nabawi for 3 days. There were no azan, there was no iqamah, there was no jama'ah. Instead, there was bloodshed, there were arrows, and there was all kind of problems there. They allegedly raped over 1,000 women. Al-Madaini reports from Abu Qurra that Hisham ibn Hassan said that after the attack on Medina, 1,000 women gave birth to children without husbands. Many of the prominent companions, what they did is that they took refuge in the Hujra Mubarakah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. You know, the sacred chamber, what we call it, which is behind the Jali Mubarak now. They they took refuge there. Sa'id ibn Musayyid was one of those. He's a tabi'i. Sa'id ibn Musayyid, for 3 days, he stayed in that Hujra Mubarakah. He still performed salah there as well. Obviously, it was a darkened room, and people asked him that, how did you know it was Fajr time? How did you know it was Zuhr time? How did you know it was Asr time? For 3 days. If you read salah, you have to read it on time, don't you? Listen to what Sa'id ibn Musayyib said. He said that I could hear the azan emitting from the Prophet's grave. I heard it. This is mentioned in Wafa'ul Wafa. If you need the reference, I will show it to you. For 3 days, Wafa'ul Wafa, it is mentioned that he could hear the azan emitting from the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam's grave. This is not strange. Remember, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam himself said that on the night of Isra wal Mi'raj, I passed by Sayyidina Musa alayhi salam's grave. And what did I see? وَهُوَ قَائِمٌ يُصَلِّي. Even in his grave, he was standing. In his grave, he was standing and he was performing salah. All prophets and messengers, they perform salah in their graves. So this is something something positive that came out of this otherwise horrific incident. This itself is perhaps the biggest indication that Yazid showed no remorse and regret, that he was hell-bent on killing people. And I'll remind you again what the Prophet ﷺ said, that I will dissolve these people. These people, they don't deserve to live. These people, how dare they violate the sanctity of the final resting place of Sayyidina Rasulullah ﷺ. You killed the grandson of the Prophet. You killed half of the Ahlul Bayt. You paraded his blessed head in the streets of Karbala and in Kufa. You've rummaged the city of Madina Sharif. Isn't that enough? Well, no. He continued. Now he began on his attack in Makkah. Again, in the 64th year of Hijrah, Yazid, he sent an army, again led by Muslim bin Uqba, to Makkah, because he had heard, the people there had heard what had happened in Madina and Karbala, and they were revolting against him. Muslim bin Uqba was sent, he died on path. How did he die? He was poisoned by his own wife. Then somebody else was made the leader, and eventually they got to Makkah. They could not enter the city of Makkah, so what did they do? They decided to start pelting things into the Haram Sharif. Fireballs, basically, like catapults. They were sending catapults of fire, basically, into the Haram Sharif. Abdullah ibn Zubair, remember he's a companion of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he led the resistance. And he fought off these ugly Yazidis and ensured that the Kaaba Sharif, as much as possible, was protected. However, unfortunately, the Kaaba was badly damaged. The cover of it was burnt. Imam Jalaluddin Suyuti rahmatullahi alayhi says that on top of the Kaaba there was a tabarruk, a relic, going back thousands of years. You know the story very well, that when Sayyidina Ibrahim alayhi salam was about to sacrifice his son, that Allah replaced it with a ram. It is said that the skull of that ram had remained on top of the Kaaba for thousands of years. Imagine how many years before Sayyidina Ibrahim lived. So it was on top of the Kaaba Sharif. Even the Jahil, non-Muslim Qurayshis, they were protecting it. Yazid, however, his army, when they were throwing the catapults and when they were bombarding the Kaaba Sharif, this skull as well, this tabarruk, that was destroyed as well. They rummaged the city as much as possible. They caused havoc during this period as well. This was in the month of Rabiul Awwal in the 64th year of Hijrah. Having said that, despite their attempts, they could not overpower the people of Makkah. Abdullah ibn Zubair's army, they were firm, they were rigid, and they were managed to actually fight them off. A few days later, on the 15th of Rabiul Awwal, in the 64th year of Hijrah, 3 years after the martyrdom of Imam Hussain radiallahu ta'ala anhu, Yazid died. When news got to Makkah, Abdullah ibn Zubair, he basically called out to his followers. He said, who are you fighting for now? Who's going to pay you now? You are all mercenaries. Who's going to pay you now? Your leader is dead. As soon as they heard this, and this kind of reflects that basically they were mercenaries, they all dispersed and they all fled. They were fighting for the money, they were fighting for material. They weren't fighting for the deen. If they were fighting for the deen, they would have sat it out. They were all mercenaries, well-paid ones as well. They all dispersed and they all disappeared. What was Yazid's demise and so-called legacy? Different reports on how exactly Yazid died. He died on the 15th of Rabiul Awwal, like we have mentioned, in the 64th year of Hijrah. I will share with you 2 reports of how exactly he died. The first one is from Tarikh al-Tabari. Tarikh al-Tabari writes in that book that he basically died of thirst. And I think that's quite befitting, and I'm sure you will agree, that if you had kept Imam Hussain radiallahu ta'ala anhu thirsty for 3 days, I think it's only right that you should suffer the same outcome as well. Not just the ordinary thirst, he had plenty of water. People around him were giving him water all the time. He was saying, Alma, I need water. He was drinking the water, he was vomiting it straight away. Nothing would pass this. He was just basically vomiting after vomiting in that despicable, heinous and horrid state. He died in that way. That is one report of how he actually died. The second report is from an equally reliable source, and this is from Hafiz ibn Kathir. Hafiz ibn Kathir says, and this is well documented, he loved his animals. Whereas everybody else would perform salah, he would be outside playing with dogs. He loved his animals. In particular, he loved monkeys. He used to play with them. When his monkey used to die, he used to cry over it. Astaghfirullah, he never shed a tear over the death of Imam Hussain, but he used to cry over his monkeys dying. Reports say that the likelihood is that he died of rabies or its equivalent for monkeys, basically. He was bitten by a monkey and he died a horrid death because of that. Either way, I don't think so is the nicest way to go. May Allah protect us all. The so-called legacy, Umar bin Abdul Aziz, who came at the end of the first Islamic century. For those people who don't know, Umar bin Abdul Aziz is often called the fifth caliph of Islam. Not because he was the fifth in terms of sequence, but because of his piety. But because he put the people first once again. Because of that. In his presence, at the turn of the first Islamic century, about 40 years later, one individual spoke up and was speaking and just said, Amirul Mu'mineen Yazid. Umar bin Abdul Aziz, as soon as he heard these words, he listened to this and he said, how dare you say that? You're calling Yazid Amirul Mu'mineen? Immediately he instructed someone to lash him 20 times as a punishment. He said that this is wrong, totally wrong to call him the Amirul Mu'mineen. Imam Bukhari not just completed and compiled a beautiful Sahih al-Bukhari, by which you and I will benefit until the day of judgment. He was also an author of many other books as well. Al-Adab al-Mufrad, translated to English now. Another book he wrote is called Tarikh al-Kabir. Tarikh al-Kabir basically is basically following what a lot of Arabic scholars would do, is that they would have to write biographical accounts of reporters, hadith reporters. If I hear a hadith from Alqamah, I need to know who Alqamah is, where he was born, what's he like, where did he live, who did he hear from, who his teachers are, and so forth. So this is what we call Rijal literature. One of those works is called Tarikh al-Kabir. In Tarikh al-Kabir, Imam Bukhari wrote the biographical dictionary of loads and loads of people. In that book, he wrote the biography of 213 people whose name was Yazid. 213 individuals whose name was Yazid. Yazid ibn Fulan, Yazid ibn Fulan. He did not include Yazid ibn Muawiyah. He said that my pen is sacred. I don't want to in any way belittle my pen by including his biography in that. This is the opinion of Imam Bukhari on that. Anyone who belongs to the generation of Tabi'un, the generation that comes after the companions, as far as hadith reports are concerned, you should be quite reliable. People should respect you. People say, yeah, we're going to accept your reports. This is not the case with Yazid. Ibn Hajar Al Asqalani, the great muhaddis, the Khatam al-Huffaz, one of the great final Hafiz of hadith, he wrote in Tahzib al-Tahzib that none of Yazid's prophetic reports are dependable. They are all mardud, they are all rejected. If Yazid says, An Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, stop there, close your ears, don't listen to another word. He's mardud, he's rejected, don't listen to a thing he has to say about Islam. The only reason Ibn Hajar includes Yazid in his biographical dictionary is so that people know the difference between him and another Yazid called Yazid al-Nakhai, who lived at the same time. Just so people know the difference, that is the only reason why he's included in that work itself. The people of Damascus, how pathetic they are, that even when Yazid died, they said that, look, let's continue this within the family. So what did they do? They decided to put Muawiyah, who was the son of Yazid, as the new Amirul Mu'mineen. He was very young at the time. When he was elected as the leader, not elected, but actually made the leader, he became severely ill immediately. He did not make a single public appearance as the so-called caliph. He was too ill to do that. He never once came to the house of Allah. He never once led the Muslims in prayer. And he's supposed to be the Khalifatul Mu'mineen. His reign, it only lasted for 40 days. He died at the age of 21. In Tariq al-Khulafa, if you look at, otherwise, if you look at Tariq al-Khulafa, I haven't brought it along, but otherwise I could show you. Tariq al-Khulafa, in that book, Sayyidina Abu Bakr Siddiq, 50 pages long. Sayyidina Umar, 50 pages long, and so forth. Nice and voluminous information about them. And then for Muawiyah ibn Yazid, 4 lines. Basically what I've just explained. And then he goes on to the next caliph. Got no time for him whatsoever. To conclude, and I think it's very important that we contemplate upon this, is that on the 10th of Muharram, in the 61st year of Hijrah, the Yazidis thought they had won. When they paraded with the blessed head of Imam Hussain radiallahu ta'ala, they thought we are victorious. This is Nasrum min Allah, this is help from Allah. No, it wasn't. Allah decides who's the winner and who's the loser. And bringing it down to a humane level, a more practical level as well. In the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, فَلَا تُشْمِتْ بِيَ الْأَعْدَى. Don't make a laughing stock of people. Okay, we do that often sometimes. We say, look at such and such person, he's lost his job, served him right. It's a victory for me because I hated him. Because he said such and such about me. We do that, unfortunately. Such and such a person is divorced, serves him right. We think that's a victory. 3 years later, you find he's living a rosy life and you're begging on the streets. Victory is in the hands of Allah. Okay? Be very, very wary about making statements about such and such, this has happened to him. Serves him right. Look, Allah showing his punishment on him. Allah will decide, all in good time. Don't you make sweeping statements about other people. If you want to make sweeping statements, make good statements. Have husn zan of people. Think positive of people. As much as possible. These idiots, they try to do it. They thought, look, we are victorious. And look what happened to them. I haven't got time, otherwise I will tell you what would happen to Ibn Sa'd, to Ibn Ziyad in particular, and how they met their death. Even the people that were in Kufa and never went to Karbala, even they, a lot of them ended up disabled, a lot of them ended up with a quick death, a lot of them fell ill because of it. And it was Allah's way of showing that I control victory, it's in my hands, it's not in your hands. So, coming to a more humane and grassroots level, you could say, please resist from that. Don't make sweeping statements about other people and saying, served you right. That's in Allah's hand, okay? It's not in your hands whatsoever. It's very, very important. Was Yazid remorseful about Karbala? I think I've answered that. That, according to the reports that I have given you, the reliable sources, you can understand where he went and what he did. There's absolutely no sign of regret, no remorse whatsoever. And like I said, when it comes to the Yazid forgiven, read this in this book, please. Please do take it. It only costs £1. £1's not going to break anyone's bank, inshallah. But do take this. It's a very important source. Was Yazid forgiven? Those people who say he's forgiven, okay, ask them. If he's forgiven, that means he's not going to the fire of hell. If he's not going to the fire of hell, it means he's going to Jannah. There's only 2 places people can go, isn't it, in the Akhirah? It's either Jahannam or Jannah, isn't it? So if you're saying he's forgiven, it means he can't go to the fire of hell. So therefore he's going to Jannah. Ask these people, if you truly believe that Yazid is forgiven, then please, in your du'as after Salah, why don't you do a dua, Ya Allah, enter us into Jannah with Yazid. You read in a dua, وَأَدْخِلْنَا الْجَنَّةَ مَعَ الْأَبْرَارِ. Oh Allah, enter us into Jannah with the pious people. Why don't you do a dua and say, وَأَدْخِلْنَا الْجَنَّةَ مَعَ Yazid. Please, do a dua like that. And then watch their reaction. No one on God's earth will pray like that, will they? People are going to say that please enter Jannah with the Ahlul Bayt, with Imam Hussain radiallahu ta'ala. No one's going to say that enter into Jannah with the name of Yazid, are they? Today, in literature, where are the parameters of the debate when it comes to Yazid? I'll tell you what it is. When you pick up the books, and including Ihya Ulumuddin by Imam Ghazali, including Hafiz ibn Kathir al-Bidayah wa Nihaya, classical sources, when you mention Yazid, what is the debate about? Is he a Muslim or not? That's what the debate's about. Not whether he's a good Muslim or not, not whether he's forgiven. The first debate is whether he's a Muslim or not. The second debate is, are we allowed to curse him or not? Can we send lanat on him? Lanat, remember our Prophet, peace be upon him, said, use that very carefully. Lanat in Arabic means be far from the rahmah of Allah. You should be very careful about praying against someone. Hafiz ibn Kasir says, because the Prophet in his hadith said that whoever scares the people of Medina, then upon him is the lanat of the people and the angels. On that basis, Hafiz ibn Kasir says, you can send lanat to Yazid. In Shara Qaid Nasfiya, Allama Taftazani openly 3 lines of it curses Yazid. This is where the debate is in the classical books. And you're telling me that the debate is actually about whether he is forgiven or not? It's absurd, it's pathetic, there is absolutely no basis to it. Overall, what I would say, especially, mashallah, there's so many youngsters here as well, is that our fathers, our forefathers have done a brilliant job in ensuring that we all remember Imam Hussain radiallahu ta'ala anhu. And Allah knows the true reward for that. But we now have to carry that on to our children as well. We have a responsibility. That in the same way that for 1,375 years people have remembered Imam Hussain, thanks to the methods, thanks to the gatherings, thanks to the literature, we have to ensure that it continues as well. So, as much as possible, we need to pass on the message about the brilliance of Imam Hussain radiallahu ta'ala anhu, his self-sacrifice and love for the family of Imam Hussain radiallahu ta'ala anhu. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala forgive all our sins. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept our gathering. Ameen. أقول قولي هذا وأستغفر الله لي ولكم ولسائر المؤمنين والمؤمنات. Just like I said, if you have a pound in your pocket, it's not going to cost much. You can't buy a paper for nowadays for £1. And the paper is obsolete and useless the next day. So it's only £1. A lot of research has gone into this. Please do take a copy. It's a very important one. There's lots of the appendixes. Also, if you do have £5, then the Aqidah book as well, explaining our Aqidah of the Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah. You know, when people hear the word Aqidah, they get confused. Oh, ilm, ghaib, nur, this, that and the other. Let's go back to basics and find out what our Aqidah really is. So if you can, then do purchase this as well. Later this week, on Sunday, if you are available, we're doing a talk in Sultan on ISIS. So inshallah, I myself will be speaking, and Imam Muhammad Assalam as well. So if you're available at 4 o'clock in Luton, I think it's been advertised on social media as well. Do come down to that as well. Jazakallah. Questions? Any questions? You can speak up though.
Just one question, Imam. You know, certain individuals, they insult Amir Muawiyah, the father of Yazid. We just
Sayyidina Muawiyah radiallahu ta'ala anhu was a companion. Number 2, Sayyidina Muawiyah radiallahu ta'ala anhu used to write down the revelation in the time of the Prophet, peace be upon him, meaning the Quran. He was a Katib-e-Wahi, meaning he used to write it. Sayyidina Muawiyah radiallahu ta'ala anhu, by virtue of being a companion, is Jannati. We have been totally prohibited from using even a single word of abuse towards any of the companions. Okay, fair enough. Some people say, but hang on, his son was Yazid. A father, when it comes to religion, is not responsible for the actions of his son, especially when he is no longer around. Muawiyah radiallahu ta'ala anhu is mentioned in his book. When he was on his deathbed, he said, Unzur Ali ibn Hussain ibn Fatima, فَإِنَّهُ أَحَبُّ النَّاسِ. Keep a good eye on Sayyidina Imam Hussain because he's the most beloved of people. He meant keep an eye in a sense of a good way, isn't it? Okay, a father cannot be responsible for the actions of his son, especially after he's passed away. The proof of that is Sayyidina Nuh alayhi salam. Sayyidina Nuh alayhi salam is the Prophet of Allah. His own son never got onto the ark. So Muawiyah radiallahu ta'ala anhu is an absolutely great companion. He had the Prophet's du'as with him. You know, the Prophet ﷺ, on the occasion of Hajj, he repeatedly said, Oh Allah, make the fire haram upon Muawiyah, make it haram upon Muawiyah. And who are we now to argue with that? This is the dua of our Prophet ﷺ. Any other questions?
Alhamdulillah, Jazakallah fi ahsani jaza. A very informative lecture today, once again, an interactive one also. Allah Ta'ala preserve our Honorable Sheikh in blessed ultimate mercy and blessings upon him, inshallah. Short zikr and then dua.